You guys have been showing love to this series saying, hey, this has been so helpful. So I'm going to continue this series going into week 7 of the fantasy football season. Over 8 players that you could be plugging into your lineup due to the injuries, due to the apocalypse that we are going to be seeing going into this week. 17 running backs alone that are going to be missing week 7 due to injuries and or the bye week. An additional 13 players from any position, whether it's quarterback, wide receiver, running back, or tight ends, that are going to be missing week 7 alone, just based off of the bye weeks. I'm not even including all the other injured players that I haven't even accounted for. That is 30 players in total alone that are going to be missing your lineups coming into week 7, which is absolutely crazy. So you have to dig deep into your roster to say, okay, who has the highest upside coming into week 7? Before I actually get into my list, I always like to bring honorable mentions of players that you can start up, plug and play, waiver wire pickups, whatever the case may be, depending on what type of league you are in. And let's start at the quarterback position here. Brian Hoyer is not sexy, is not exciting, but if you're in a 2 quarterback league, maybe you drafted Anthony Richardson, maybe you drafted Daniel Jones, maybe you have a Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow, and all those guys are on bye weeks. Brian Hoyer could be stepping into a perfect opportunity coming into this week. He is playing the Chicago Bears, who currently give up a lot of points to the quarterback position. And look, it wasn't sexy last week whatsoever. He only got 3 points versus the New England Patriots, but he's projected right now 14 fantasy points coming into this week. And if you do need a quarterback and you are struggling, I will be plugging him and playing him if I am in a super flex league. I'm going to stick with the quarterback position as well with my beloved New York Football Giants. If Daniel Jones plays, you start him with confidence, or Tyrod Taylor, which we saw last week. Look, they couldn't find the end zone. He didn't throw that touchdown pass, but he was pretty efficient. 24 for 36 this past week, which I don't think is bad. He also rushed the ball 5 times for 24 yards. He is playing the Washington Commanders this week, who currently give up the 4th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. So once again, another player that you can plug and play. Is not sexy, is not exciting. He is currently projected 13 fantasy points coming into this week. So once again, if you need a desperation play and you're saying these are the only 2 quarterbacks on your waiver wire, I understand. Another running back a lot of people that are probably already going to be starting is Zach Evans coming into this week. Look, I haven't gotten the confidence coming from Sean McVay saying that you can start Zach Evans, but I understand if you have to start him, if you need a plug and play type of guy, you expect him to get this workload coming in going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So hopefully you can plug and play him. Rashee Rice, who has been gradually improving week in and week out, this past 2 games, over 11 fantasy points in week 6 and in week 5, finding an end zone in the past 2 weeks as well. He's going against the Los Angeles Chargers, who currently give up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. He is an honorable mention just purely because a lot of people are starting him. And if you need a high upside matchup, this could be the week for Rashee Rice to really break that 15 plus threshold, maybe even break that target, also that snap percentages on the field. And last but not least, Michael Mayer, who's also been improving as well with Brian Hoyer and or Jimmy G. They're clearly getting this guy in the lineup here. Snap percentages from week 4, 51, week 5, 66, week 6, 81% snap share, and finishing against New England, 5 out of 6 targets for over 12 fantasy points. They want to continue to get Michael Mayer worked without a doubt. So definitely plug and play him if you can coming into week 7. All right, my first high upside player coming into week 7 is the running back position. I'm going to be going through every positional group, running back, wide receivers, and then maybe even tight ends for you at the end. So my first player that you should be starting that has a high upside is Deontay Foreman coming in this week, going against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, look, with the way the running back position has been struggling, I'm not expecting too much of a high upside game for Deontay Foreman. If he does find the end zone, you're happy with this. If he's getting 9 to 8, maybe even 12 fantasy points, you are really happy with that outcome. Once again, maybe you have a David Montgomery who's missing this week. Maybe you have a Miles Sanders or Joe Mixon or Dameon Pierce or Breece Hall, and you maybe picked up Deontay Foreman off of waiver wire saying that I need to plug and play somebody. If you get more than 5 fantasy points, I think that oddly enough, that is a win, and that's a high upside play, specifically going into week 7, oddly enough. Now, the plus plus side of this is that Rashawn Johnson, Roscoe, is going to be missing week 7 with another concussion coming out of this week, which is unfortunate. Not another concussion. He just wasn't cleared out of the concussion protocol, which gives you the belief that they're going to be running the ball a little bit more, especially with Tyson Baguette, I like to call him, starting in the lineup. Justin Fields is out. They might have to result in running the ball a little bit more. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders don't give up the most fantasy points to the running back position. They are a middle of the pack defense, but we've seen not the explosiveness, but we saw how decent last week, Deontay Foreman was against the Minnesota Vikings. 15 carries for 65 yards, averaging 4.3 yards per carry. It's not too bad with only 61% of the snap share. You expect that to jump to at least 80% of the snap share coming into this week, especially with Roscoe and Justin Fields, missing week 7. So keep that in mind. If you do have Deontay Foreman, he is somebody I am excited to start coming into week 7. All right, my second high upside play, somebody that you're happy to get, 6, 8, 10, 12 fantasy points coming into this week, is Latavius Murray. With Damian Harris going on IR, missing the next 4 games of the season, Latavius Murray steps up into this big role. And the quote-unquote big role is the goal line opportunities. One of the biggest things that a lot of non-James Cook believers were worried about was that James Cook wasn't going to get the goal line opportunities. It was going to be Damian Harris. Damian Harris was going to be the Jamal Williams for the Buffalo Bills. If that is true, and if you're seeing these trends with James Cook getting 49% of the snap share this past week and Latavius Murray getting 49% of the snap share this past week, then that could be trending into that direction, even though I don't believe it. But we have to take account of the facts of what we saw in the past 2 weeks. Now, Latavius, once again, is going to be stepping into another great opportunity going against this week the New England Patriots, who currently are middle of the pack defense against the run. But you have to believe that once James Cook, still getting the opportunities on the first and second down opportunities, maybe even third down opportunities, once they get into the goal line area, Latavius Murray can get you, I don't know, maybe 10 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown, maybe even 2 touchdowns. And that is something that you hope for coming into this week, because you need that high upside play, that 8, 9, 10, 12 plus fantasy points. And if you do get that from someone like a Latavius Murray that's probably still available on your waiver wires, he is somebody that you can plug and play that has that high upside coming into week 7. All right, my third high upside player coming into this week, another running back, and that is Jalil McLaughlin. Look, he has been doing decent these past couple weeks. Obviously, in week 6 against Kansas City, we weren't expecting him to get a big opportunity, but the 2 weeks before against Chicago, over 19 fantasy points. Week 5 against the Jets, over 17 fantasy points. And those are teams that give up a lot of points to the running back position. Now he is playing the Green Bay Packers, who currently give up the 5th most points, to the running back position. Granted, Javonte Williams was out. Javonte Williams was missing some of those games, and he is coming back. He wasn't on the injury list at the end, Thursday and Friday coming off this week as I am recording this. Not saying he's going to get injured, not saying I don't believe in Javonte. What I do believe is that Jalil is now the backup for Javonte Williams. Jalil is going to be seeing maybe that 60-40 workload that we're still seeing coming into this year. Javonte still hasn't, surpassed that threshold that we were hoping and expecting. He hasn't had 50% of the snap shares so far this year. Granted, once again, he has been injured and missed basically 2 games this year. He has a good matchup. I do believe Javonte could have his best game, but what you are expecting from Jalil, as I've been saying throughout this whole video, the 6, the 8, the 10 type fantasy points that you are hoping for someone like a Jalil. That sounds crazy, and I know I sound like a broken record, but you are struggling with running backs, and you have to be happy with 6 to 8 points coming into this week. And Jalil can do that and or more, because we've seen him break out for those opportunities. We see him getting the opportunities in the air. Specifically, the last 4 games, he's been averaging 3 receptions per game, 3 receptions per game, and over 4 targets per game. If you can get that going for Jalil early on in this game, you can see something good happen against the Green Bay Packers at home, where also the Green Bay Packers are getting healthy. With Aaron Jones back, with Christian Watson back off a bye week, this team can be up early right? And they might have to result in throwing the ball and dumping it off to Jalil early and often. So once again, be okay getting 6, 8 to 10 fantasy points from Jalil McLaughlin in a high upside week 7. All right, my last running back on this list that I do believe has high upside just signed with this team, and I did mention his teammate earlier, and that is Darell Henderson. Now, hear me out. I am not saying he is not going to be the backup for Zach Evans. Zach Evans has to be this guy that we're expecting to take this backfield coming off of this week, purely because Henderson is coming off the street. Henderson is not in football shape. Henderson is probably purely going to be there for pass protecting, pass blocking, and potentially goal line opportunities. And this is why I believe he has a high upside coming into this week. Not purely because of the goal line opportunities, but also of, in my opinion, the non-confident statements that I've been hearing from Sean McVay. They've been talking to Sean McVay in reports and saying, what do you think about Zach Evans? How is Zach Evans going? How do you think he's going to perform? What is his workload going to look like? He hasn't given me that confidence that Zach Evans is going to be somebody leading this backfield, somebody that he trusts in pass protection and passing opportunities. I feel like if Darrell's 100% and if he is healthy, he's probably going to be gassed, Darell Henderson will be into this game. And what's crazy to think about, he is playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who currently at the moment give up the 7th most fantasy points to the running back position. Now, granted, they're coming off a bye week. You have to understand that they may be a little bit skewed, but the way this offense, has been performing with Cooper Kupp back, with Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford slinging the ball down the field, if they get into that red zone area, I expect Darell Henderson getting all, if not, I would say more than half of the opportunities in that red zone area when the ball is there. So once again, if he scores, if he has 9 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown, that's a W for you. That's a good way to say, you know what, I am happy with 9 points. I am happy with 8 or 10 points in that week from Darell Henderson that you just picked up off of the waiver wires. So look, I know it's not exciting. I know he just came off the street, but that goal line opportunity with Henderson over Zach Evans, I do believe is real coming into week 7. So if you do need a running back star with a high upside, Darell Henderson. All right, my 5th player of this week that has high upside at the wide receiver position, if you are struggling there, is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is somebody coming into a perfect opportunity who has been increasing his workload, has been increasing his production in this offense. And this is kind of what we were expecting coming into this year. We're saying don't expect in the first 5-6 weeks for Jackson Smith-Njigba to just be this wide receiver that we all expected him to be. He had to jump hurdles. He had to gradually improve and gradually gain those snap percentages that we saw, and that's exactly what you can see here in the first 4 weeks of the season. 59, 60, 56, 44, 53, and in week 6, 72, his highest snap percentages after the bye week. Now, I will not be surprised if he matches that 7% snap share or gets even more coming into this week. Not only that, DK Metcalf is questionable, not questionable, but a game time decision, which I guess is questionable, coming into week 7 against the Arizona Cardinals. He is still sore. He's still dealing with those injuries. And if he's not 100%, even if he is a go, how much of the snaps is DK Metcalf going to play? Is he going to be a decoy? Is he somebody that's going to get 50% of the snap share, where we see Jackson Smith-Njigba getting that 70%? And that is something that you want to see coming into week 7, especially against a division rival in the Arizona Cardinals, who currently give up the 8th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. They're going to have to start spreading the ball around. They're going to have to understand that Jackson Smith-Njigba, you spent a first-round draft pick, and you had to get him the opportunity. And if someone's down like a DK Metcalf, not 100%, let's see what he got. Let's see what he can get. Can he get more than 6, 7, 8 targets coming into this week? I think there is a true possibility that you can plug and play him at the flex position, which will give you that high upside play coming into week 7. All right, my 6th play that you should be starting at the wide receiver position is Jaylen Hyatts. Now, if you need a boom player, this could be a boom or bust player, but I do believe there's high upside coming into this week. Jaylen Hyatts, he has also, kind of like Jackson Smith-Njigba, has been increasing his snap percentages. You look in the last 3 weeks, maybe in even week 3, 32% of the snap. Week 4 against Seattle, 60. Week 5, 46, he goes back down, then it goes back up in week 6. 73% snap share, his highest percentages, his highest targets, his highest receptions, and that means they want to get him more involved in this passing game. This offensive line is getting more healthier, which is giving more time for Tyrod Taylor and or Daniel Jones that is going to be playing coming into this week. Now, once again, he is not somebody that I am expecting to get you that boom playing, but if it does, it could happen this week. Why? Because the Washington Commanders currently give the 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. What do we see on that Thursday night against the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields? Broken coverages, those zone sits. Does he has the speed to get into the secondary? And that's what we saw from DJ Moore, sitting in those zone coverages and also breaking that secondary and making those big plays. Jaylen Hyatts has that speed, and Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones has that arm to get the ball to Jaylen Hyatts that can have that boom game that we can see from him coming in week 7 against the Washington Commanders. So if you do need it, maybe this is more of a deeper league, maybe you're in a 14, 16 man league, and Jaylen Hyatts could be somebody that you can plug and play going into week 7 with some high upside. All right, my second to last player, somebody I've been raving about all off season, has been getting the opportunity, just not those big fantasy points that we were hoping for, and that is Elijah Moore. Currently, right now, Elijah Moore has been getting the targets that we were hoping and expecting, averaging 7 targets per game, which, you know, if you told me, that's actually exceeding expectations. I was saying I'm happy with 5 to 6, maybe a touchdown a game or 2. He hasn't found the end zone. He hasn't had those yards per catch, those big bomb passes. He's been this short yardage opportunity for Elijah Moore, but getting the targets. He did miss out on Deshaun Watson these past 2 weeks. Deshaun Watson now is a full go coming into week 7 against the Indianapolis Colts, who are currently give up the 12th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. We have seen them struggling, giving up points to a lot of wide receivers. Could this finally be the game for Elijah Moore and Deshaun Watson while he's coming back? Could he break that, 11 plus threshold? That's his highest game so far this season with 11 points. Can he break that? I actually believe he can. Hopefully, I really hope so. This is why he is a high upside player for me. He is somebody that I am starting because I have CeeDee Lamb on a bye, because I have T. Higgins on a bye, because I have so many of these people on a bye, Adam Thielen, that Elijah Moore, you might have to result in starting him, closing your eyes and saying, hey, if he's getting those targets, you have to hope and expect the points are going to come sooner rather than later. So you need a high upside play. Elijah Moore could be somebody you can plug in your flex going into week 7. All right, and last but not least, another wide receiver on this list is Michael Wilson. Look, Michael Wilson has been improving each and every week. Now, he comes off of that San Francisco game in week 4, catches 7 out of 7, 2 touchdowns, over 26 fantasy points, and then against Cincinnati in week 5, get you less than 3 fantasy points. So and that was a culprit of me starting him, saying, okay, he's going to get integrated. He's going to give me a good floor at the flex position. He comes back against the Rams, catches 3 out of 4 targets, just under 10 fantasy points. Now he's playing the Seattle Seahawks, a divisional rival who currently gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Kyler Murray is coming back, okay? Not saying he's coming back this week, but he's coming back, right? Not only that, you could probably still pick him up off of waiver wires right now. Only rostered in 28% of sleeper leagues. And if you can get him and plug and play him with a high upside opportunity with all the wide receivers that are on bye weeks this week, I am somebody as well, multiple leagues that I'm struggling with bye weeks, is that I am starting Michael Wilson because of the opportunity and the upside that we've already seen with him. We've seen that he can be that 7 target per game, that 80% snap share per game, that over 20 fantasy points per game. It's there. It just needs to be consistent now with Josh Dobbs. So hopefully you can plug and play Michael Wilson in your flex coming into week 7 of the fantasy football season. Michael Wilson, Elijah Moore, Jaylen Hyatts, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Darell Henderson, Jalil McKinnon, Latavius Murray, and Deontay Foreman. Those are my 8 high upside players that I hope get you 6, 8, 10 or more fantasy points, which sounds crazy. It genuinely does with all these injuries and bye weeks coming into week 7. Guys, comment down below with any questions, comments, and concern. And as always, It's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.